surprised to hear how well known you are beyond Togo. Does it surprise you that you're so well known beyond Togo? I'm not really surprised. We work for the African continent. As you know, my personal motto is: you may be Central African, Beninese, Ivorian, Togolese or Cameroonian. Anyone who comes to the African continent doesn't know who's who. The fact that we're Africans and that we have a black conscience is the most important thing for me, so the question of nationality is one that I don't like talking about very much because I'm a bit from that generation. Africans? African intellectuals revolting against this artificial division of the African continent, with the consequences we're seeing. So I feel more African, Pan-African than Togolese, etc. So these revolts...
Greetings, families, welcome back. Thank you so much for clicking on this video once again. I'm excited to share this news with you. I heard this news for 2 weeks now, so you can tell how happy I am to share this news with you. There are rumors around Togo will join the AES, whatnot. I thought, let me look for this interview, because you know how we do it here. We want receipt, and not only receipt, we want the whole interview. It's 1 hour above taking our part, because this part concerning whether Togo will join AES or not. So families, Mr. Robert or Professor Robert is a foreign minister of Togo. I agree with him 100%. I'm African. You know, a lot of people, when they see me, they said, oh, my Nigeria sister, my Nigeria. I can't remember anyone seeing me and say, oh, sis, you are from Ghana. No. Anytime somebody say me that they don't know me, they said, I know you are from Nigeria. I agree with you. The video is long. I will leave you here, families. Enjoy, and I'll be back. Thank you for your time.
So these revolts, let's say, we see in your words because, as we noted in the element, many appreciate your speeches which have become more and more revolted. We'd like to say, then, that the first point on which I wanted to exchange views is you, Robert DUSSEY, as someone said in the element. You've been with Togo's Ministry of Foreign Affairs for some time now. Honorable, so that's not true, but it's been a month, I think it's been a while. It's because the President of the Republic, President Ford Hassingby, chose to entrust me with this mission, and it's this mission that I've undertaken to help him achieve longevity in this position, which doesn't happen so often. Are you the record holder? No, that's not true. I'm not the record holder. I'm not the 13-year-old, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not the record holder, but I think I am. First of all, we must congratulate the President of the Republic. And we're trying to help him in the mission he's entrusted to us. Now, it's true that we've been doing this for a decade, and for a decade we've been trying to do our best to promote Togo, to help the President of the Republic and to support the Togolese people. Finally, to bring Togo out of its state of underdevelopment and make it a strong nation that counts in the world and particularly on the African continent. So what others have pointed out in this element is precisely the fact that there is. The influence of Togolese diplomacy is becoming more apparent. What justifies a small country like Togo becoming so big diplomatically? Togo is often seen as small in size, but its nation is strong and great. You know it from the history of Togo's independence on April 27, 1960. Now, as you know, the true head of all diplomacy, whether in Togo or throughout the world, is the head of state, the President of the Republic. So we're in a position where as soon as the President of the Republic, President Ford Hassingby, gives instructions or tells us what to do, we commit ourselves 100%. And maybe that's what we're seeing in this radiation. But for us, this influence must be normal, in the sense that this is how diplomacy should work. Diplomacy must enable people, countries, all those who visit a country, to see that this country shines and this country gives something. But you know, when you arrive in a country, sometimes as soon as you arrive at an airport, a port, or the land borders, you feel the sadness, you don't really see it, it's not good. So we're on a mission where, alongside our colleagues, the ministers in charge of tourism, culture, etc., trade, for example, we have to work together so that the influence of our country, Togo, is effective.
Thank you, families. I'll be coming in and going because it's somebody's interview. I don't want us to get copyright or anything like that. Mr. Professor Robert, I disagree with you. I agree and disagree with you. You need to check your borders. If you says that, or if you know that the borders and the airports tells about your country, then I haven't been to your airport, but I've been to the borders. Please check it. Make it work for the ECOWAS, at least for the ECOWAS countries. Because right now, I've been there not too long ago. It's not working. Most of us have to pass through our aunties and uncles' house. I can't remember the last time I passed through Afrao border. The last time was when I was at school. My ID card can pass me through easily than holding passport. So please look at that side. Please let's listen to more. I'll be back.
In the sub-region, for example, you wouldn't expect Togo to play this leading role. That's why some people seem surprised. Togo has a significant history with various agreements, including the ACP agreements, European Union, Africa, Caribbean, Pacific, and Yaoundé Agreement. President Iadima had made diplomacy the spearhead of his entire foreign policy, of course, because we're talking about diplomacy and even domestic policy. Today, the President of the Republic has understood that one of Togo's strong points is diplomacy. And of course, it's this diplomacy that comes in the form of mediation, exchange, and dialogue. In the sub-region, we're in a period that I'd say is a little difficult for the West African sub-region, even for the African continent, but specifically for our sub-region. And someone had to play a role. Let's talk about these difficulties. As I said earlier, we were surprised because Africa is currently going through a series of crises. ECOWAS is in the middle of a crisis, and Togo is one of them. In a role, I want to say central. So how does this work? How does Togo manage to mediate in the crisis between ECOWAS and the states today? How are things going? Let's go behind the scenes. A little secret? Tell all the secrets. Yes, it's a little secret. I think today the key to Togolese diplomacy and the reasons why Togo plays this role is first and foremost linked to the personality of the President of the Republic. President Faure Single is one of the heads of state in the world, and in Africa in particular, who speaks very little. He knows his country well, he knows the sub-region very well, he's a humble man, so he's a great listener. Of his qualities that few people have. When you don't talk much, you're a great listener, you know your country and your region very well, and you talk to people. But I think the result is there. And so beyond his qualities, is someone who is obviously very religious, so he's very religious. I don't want to name him, I don't want to say he's very Christian, very Muslim, so as not to offend anyone, but he's very religious. So when you have this advantage, you see the pacifists. So he listens to people. Good, bad, good, everyone. And the result, of course, rubs off on diplomacy. That's why. The President plays a crucial role in listening to all parties and finding solutions during difficult times. Public wanted to play, not because they want to play, but because many come to him, that is to say it is he who inspires confidence between the belligerents. In fact, obviously in the choice of Togo.
Are you still here and enjoying the interview? I like the fact that he said the President, of Togo, is a listener and he listens well. And that's why they have select him, or they asked him to be a mediator between Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. When they came to mediate, they didn't just come. They signed agreements to allow them to use their borders, their port, which is great. It's helping them a lot. I must say that Togo has been good to the AES. There is more to come, families. I'll be back. Thank you for your time.
In fact, it's a party choice linked to the fact that today, do you accept the fact that Togo is presented as a buffer country, talking to all sides? Is that something? Yes, that's true of Togo today, we have to admit it, like a bridge between everyone. A bridge today? Speaking of institutions, between SADC and AES, a pan today between SADC, West Africa and other regions of the world. Do you remember? Yeah, 17 months ago. We organized the first edition of the OMOP Sense Crote for Orange here, where all the partners, all the Africans and partners from all over the world met. To talk about issues of peace and conflict resolution. If you remember 2.5 years ago, ECOWAS here in Lome declared the city of Lome a city of peace, dialogue and tolerance. It was an initiative of the elders, the clerics and the members of the CDAO. And so you see that there is first of all this tradition, and the facts are there for the role that the President of the Republic plays and Togo plays. People come to Togo, they come to the President of the Republic, so they come to us to help. And when you're lucky enough to have an opportunity like this to help bring about peace. And I think the President of the Republic is doing that, and that's what we're doing alongside the President. So let's try to be a little concrete. That Africans are opposed. One of the questions, and I'm relaying this, is how things went at the height of the crisis. How do we get there? You took part in these ECOWAS meetings and decided, for example, to sanction Mali, and later Niger. As you are at the heart of the mediation, are there two camps from the outset? Is the situation evolving? These are some of the reasons why we're glad to have you here today, because we want to understand. What could have motivated all this? Sometimes we complicate our lives by trying to find out who's behind which side, but it's like in a family, and it's important too. No, but it means that everywhere else, when a problem arises, even among your children, the children don't always have the same opinion, the same position. So within ECOWAS, in other institutions, the African Union, all international institutions, the United Nations, it's always the same thing. But back to the case of ECOWAS, obviously, the most important thing I can tell you today is Togo is a bridge between ECOWAS and other countries. It has been clear, has always chosen peace, even when it is costly. Despite difficulties since 2000, they do not have a solution to these events. 2021 in the sub-region, the succession of coups d'état, events today, terrorist attacks from Sahel countries. As coastal countries, we need to find a solution. That's Togo's position. So whenever people approach us, or even in our positions, we always try to advocate dialogue. Let's talk to everyone, let's listen to everyone. Sometimes it's tempting to have both the carrot and the stick, sometimes that's part of the game, but we tend to put the carrot in front and the stick behind. That's the strategy.
And that was a great strategy that Togo has used to be a friend, to be a brother, and not to go against the AES. He went on to say that those people who were saying they should go and fight them, the sanctions and all that, later on came to them and asked them to mediate, to help them, talk to them. I think one of them was the Sierra Leone president. You remember when he came, he said, it's better late than never. You can tell that his conscience was judging him sort of. I might be wrong, but when I listened to this video over and over, he's the one that was coming in my head. And I was thinking about Nigeria, but the Nigeria president didn't come. It was, he has sent a delegate. We know that. Please, let's listen to more. I'll be back. Thank you for your time.
What do you say to those who clearly state that you have supported coups d'état within Togo? Togo has no interest in supporting a coup d'état. That's what many people say they knew. Robert Opposition, you were against the extension, you have clearly if we are against sanctions, because it's common sense that we are against sanctions, we are. Nobody can accept a coup d'état, and I'm the first to say so. As Minister of Foreign Affairs in Lome, Togo, I would be the victim of a coup d'état if one were to occur. No serious politician can accept a coup d'état. So we in Togo are against coups d'état, but faced with certain coups d'état, we have to be pragmatic and realistic. When there's a coup d'etat, do you think we should go to war to restore the person who lost power? Do you know the language? Think, some will of course. That's why we say no. That's why in Togo we say no, we're not for war, we're for peace. It cost us dearly, but that's the clear position of the President of the Republic. Weren't you afraid of reprisals? Because it's a pretty courageous position, it has to be said, because you had other countries against you, notably neighboring countries, but you also had certain international powers that are said to have great influence on African politics. Weren't you afraid of alienating the United States at one point, but more so France? Well, to be honest, we're not afraid. We've never been afraid. From the President of the Republic, it's even a personal conviction. Without my foreign affairs, it's a conviction, we assume it. But what's more important is that those who said yesterday that Togo was wrong and who criticized Togo behind the scenes today have joined us, and that's what diplomacy is all about. Sometimes you take positions, you have people against you, but when you know where we're going today, the finality of all the crises we've been through is there. What was yesterday, is that yesterday didn't agree with us, they even try to go to work with what they condemned. Yesterday's talk about not talking to certain countries has now changed, with those countries now seeking negotiations with Niger.
The interview is so powerful. I really enjoy it. I hope you are enjoying it as well. Those people, the Sunshine and the rest, they are coming. We see them all line up and bring, I said, big word, and one of our members, our family members, put me right. Credentials. They are coming in with their credentials on red carpet. These are the people that normally, before when they were pushing for sanctions and everything, they don't want to shake hands, they don't want to take photos and all that. They don't want their bosses to see them talk or speak. Everything is coming clear now, my families. Let's listen to more. I'll be back.
They even come to see us to facilitate contacts with them and Niger, and that's what the President of the Republic has done. That's what we're doing ourselves. So today, we're all on the same wavelength, aren't we? In short, time has proved you right, and it's difficult when you take such a position, and that's what's most important. The finality sometimes makes you say to yourself, but it wasn't wrong to take this decision. It took that voice of wisdom, of understanding, of dialogue to arrive at that result. So, to conduct this interview, even if I'm alone before you, I'm not totally alone. Take his question and answer it. I'll let you follow up on my colleague Jill Boko's question. I think so. I'm Bokajil from New Activity, and my question is this. Your diplomatic doctrine is non-alignment. Not the West, not even the East, not even the wind, not even the sunset. And you look favorably on the world's geopolitical shift towards multipolarity? And as we know, in this context, how do you explain your sympathy for the countries of the Sahel Alliance, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, which are moving eastwards, with a break, let's say epistemologically, with the West? And this has prompted me to ask you, does Togo want to join to the Liptako-Goman Charter? That's the question from my colleague Jill Boko, whom I salute.
Well, this is the elephant in the room. This is the question and the answer that is circulating. As you can tell, we came a long way, about 15 or 20 minutes of the interview before we get to this question. And the reason and why he gave that answer, you will hear him soon. Families, please listen, and I'll be back. Thank you for your time.
Algeria? Well, very clear. Yes, no, of course. I think our friend Jill hasn't changed. He's as forceful as ever. But I'll answer that question quite frankly. I may surprise you with what I know about the countries of the Alliance of Sahel States. Contrary to what some people think, are these countries heading east, or in what direction? I don't think so. What I do know about these countries is that they have decided to regain their sovereignty. They are Africans first and foremost, and it's not that they are leaving one camp to go to another. It's what I know. I am not going to speak for them, but for us who frequent them, what binds us together. And I'm responding to the concern expressed by DUSSEY. DUSSEY, what binds us together is that we shared the same ideology. It's Africa first, our country first. I believe in the sovereignty of a country. Either it's total, or it's not. Today, after 60 years of independence, most of our political, civil and military leaders, in the intellectual and cultural spheres, even you as a journalist, but we talk all the time, all the time. We are together. We realize that we don't control our countries. So when we're lucky enough to have countries that are aware of this and want to take charge, we have to support them. And that's what we're doing. So we're close to these countries because we share the same vision. That of our countries and of Africa first of all. That's why we say we're Africans, and when we talk about languages, we're talking about anaphonic Africa, because it's we ourselves who determine what we are today. It's because we're Africans. We can't assert ourselves because we make our rulers, our countries, by subcontracting to someone else. We assert ourselves because we're in a country, and that's that. So you used an expression, you're close to that. It's not impossible for Togo to join the US, but it depends on the President and Parliament's decision. Ask the Togolese people, Togolese and Togolese Lambda, if the Togolese want to enter the US, you will see their answers. I'll tell you that they'll say yes, it's a nice exercise, I'll take a word. More than 70% will say yes, because today, whether in Togo, Benin, Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, Cameroon or South Africa, African people everywhere want to be themselves. When you see us, we're not against anyone, not against anyone, we keep telling ourselves that. They want us to serve them, telling us no. Our fathers, the fathers of African independence, were part of the struggle to give us this independence, which is how we live today. You and I are here, working. After 66 years, do you want us to carry on? What kind of legacy will we leave our children? I think it's irresponsible to even want to be here. You are free and you refuse freedom.
Yes, families, please share this video. I know it's long, but you can watch it on telly. Share it, not me, but the interview. Share it. Who does that? You can tell his body language when he's speaking about that. Ah! You want freedom. You have been given freedom, and you said, no, if I get my freedom, I will not be getting allowances, I will not be getting free clothes, which is the crumbs they give African leaders that they put in their pocket. So yes, the door is open, but I'm not going. I will stay there and be watching and be listening to my boss to do whatever he or she wants to do with me. And so even my children and my great-great-grandchildren to come, I prefer them to be under this, I don't want to use the word, but you know the word, and be manipulated and be controlled and all that. Yes, I will lead them and I want them to be the same. I don't want them to free themselves. Who does that? 3 kings, brave men, said enough is enough. We want to sacrifice our life and free our people. If you want to continue to be house slaves, be there, be that. We don't want. And lead your people to be the house slaves. Families, please listen. I'll be back. Thank you. Share it, like it, please.
Today we say no to domination. You're tired, we're tired, and I say tired, I get it, that's where you're going. That's where you're going. So the question I'm going to ask is to the intellectual Robert DUSSEY, because you're a man of science above all. What do you think justifies success? Let's talk about these military coups d'état in the Sahel, because there's something we need to try and pin down. Back in the day, coups d'état were frowned upon, but today, they've become popular, they've been hailed by the people in the street. And, as you rightly point out, we're seeing popular support. What do you think justifies this? I can't give you an exact answer, but I think that these coups d'etat have become popular because at some point people have had enough, as they say. People are fed up with a lot of things, but we have to be careful. I'm against coups d'etat, of course, but when people are faced with bad governance, they also have to be self-critical. Of course, there is also internal bad governance in our countries, which I would say is unacceptable at a certain level. And in front too. Interference. From certain non-African powers, the population no longer knows where to go. So when they discover young soldiers who come with promises, so the population runs after these young soldiers. Today, we're saying that the President of the Republic is trying to be careful. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s, there were many coups d'etat in African senates, and we all know the results. We hope these young people who are coming to power through coups d'etat today will quickly turn military regimes into civilian ones. For better governance of their country, that's most important.
Mr. Robert, Professor Robert, yes, we heard you. Well, I agree with you in a lot of things, but yes, for better government, democracy, no, we don't want it. We don't want that in the AES. It's not about democracy. You said it already, that poor management, that's what democracy brings into Africa. What they are doing is democracy enough for us. If you think, one of our family members said I should look back to the previous videos, and I'll find some things that are quite disturbing, how they were managing those countries. And you don't have to look far in some of our West Africa countries or Eastern countries to see what democracy, the role democracy is playing. So, Mr. Professor Robert, sorry, please, we don't want that. Not now. Let's continue and listen to him.
Are you optimistic? Robert DUSSEY, it's been a while. We've been seeing upheavals for at least 3 years now. Do you think the path taken by these countries is the right one? Personally, I'd say I'm a pragmatist. You'd have to watch them day by day to see where they're taking their countries. Some are leaders we know who are ahead of the game, in the right place at the right time. Politics has surprises and we must be wise in managing countries. Mali recently experienced tension between the military and the M5 movement. May this be the beginning? I don't think so. I know, you're a journalist, you're in your role. I don't think so. I don't think there's anything boiling over in Mali, and I think that today Malians are lucky, whether they are opponents or not, to have an exceptional man at the head of Mali. It's President Assimi Goïta. To have such a man, and what he has achieved in 2.5, 3 years of transition, nobody could do in Mali's current context. So for us, today, President Assimi Goïta is an opportunity for Mali. Now, there are realities on the ground, there are people who are impatient. It's up to President Assimi Goïta and his government to find answers to solve the problems of Malians and lead Mali towards free, democratic elections. In fact, at the last Council of Ministers, the President instructed his ministers to get ready for the elections.
Sorry, I have to come in again just to remind us about a video I made some time ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, that I was thinking they are heading towards election, preparing. But when I was resting, I was thinking, because I did say I will leave it, but I couldn't. It's still in my mind, at the back of my mind, thinking about my AES. I was thinking the ex-prime minister, maybe they let him go so he will stand for the election. I might be wrong. And Burkina Faso as well. I work on a video. I think I lost it. I'll look for it. But they had a second meeting about preparing for election. So he is right over there. I'm just a bit like spectacle. What is the word to you? I'm a bit like it's too soon to have election. But he was the one who promised them election. And when the time came, he changed the date. So we wait and see what will happen. What normally happen is there will be two people and then the country will be divided, and that's what I don't want it. But we'll see how it goes. Families, please listen to more. I'll be back.
I believe that the purity of the Malians is security. But what he did in record time, no one else could do. Who could have done what he did in Mali? We were told that Kidal was like a fortress, a stick, impregnable. You saw afterwards that it's all fabricated lies orchestrated to divide Malians. It's not even debatable that a man of this caliber could have done it. So, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the Malians, but I think there's no better person today at the head of the Malian government than a man like this. At Simi Gorta, there was a debate about the length of the transition within ECOWAS. Some preferred 6 months, others 24 months, and some even suggested 5 years. Robert DUSSEY questioned the ideal time to end the transition, sparking further debate. Practical, since we've seen similar cases in Africa. Often face the issue of transparency duration. Answering with personal convictions. Who are both intellectual and pragmatic of a pragmatic actor. I think it's a mistake to want to impose the duration of a transition on a state in transition. It's a mistake, because each country is unique. Each country has its own realities. The realities we are experiencing in Côte d'Ivoire are not the same in Togo, are not the same in Liberia, in Lib. Are not the same reality as Djibouti. So each country has its own realities and its own players on the ground. So come and stay at home. And that's what we're criticizing the givers of lessons today with our discourse. Don't stay. I can't stay here in Lome and tell the Malians and Guineans, the Burkina, the Nigerians, the Gabonese, etc., can decide on the duration of the transition. Let's be clear, we don't make mistakes, we don't take sides, we don't put ourselves in the place of others. In the duration of the transition depends on the countries and the realities of each channel, and therefore of each country. So when we're in this dynamic, we let people say, now you're going to ask me, can you and I today give Mali a transition period? In Guinea, Gabon, it's up to the players on the ground to appreciate political actions and those running the transition, deciding to go to elections. It's important for the people of Africa. Going to the polls is not the only important thing in a democracy. That all these countries, the countries we're talking about today, a few years ago, were cited as the country. Exemplary countries in terms of democracy. I'm a teacher, I taught my students about Malian democracy, which was totally decentralized from the bottom up, the communes, and we can see the result in the result today. So I believe that we should, with a great deal of wisdom, try to be inventive and realistic in the face of the realities of each of our countries. So in your words, the fact that in the end, the political system has failed. And more, the question is being asked, what political system for African countries, particularly those in the sub-region?
Going to the poll is not the only thing in democracy. I agree with you 1000%, Professor Robert. That's why I'm saying that they should let them have democratic leader. They should put that aside. We like what we are seeing. We like what we have. Let us continue this way. It's working. This way is working for us. After all, in Togo, they don't have a presidential election anymore. They have changed it to something else. Anyway, he will talk about that as well. Let's keep listening. Ballot box is nothing when it comes to elections in some countries. So let's put that aside and move on.
And we have another colleague, Ali Zarazuba, from NCI in Côte d'Ivoire, who has a question on the subject for you, so I suggest you follow him. Thank you, Mr. Robert DUSSEY. What do you think is the best political model for West African countries? French-speaking countries in particular? A parliamentary system, as in Togo, a multi-party presidential system, as in many countries, notably Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire, or a military system, as is the case today mainly in the alliance of Sahel states? So much for my question, Ali Dia Arasova from Abidjan. I'm happy to listen to our friend Eliza Asuba, but here I'm going to respond more as an apprentice philosopher. If you don't mind, go ahead. Yeah. I think you know, we've been talking about systems of governance since Socrates and Plato. Yes, I think the best system of governance, chosen by the people themselves. It's not dictatorship versus democracy? Yes, it's not a parliamentary regime like a presidential one. I think that at some point, given the difficulties and realities of the African continent today, African intellectuals, African politicians, and African populations in general should also ask themselves questions about the type of regime they want for their country. Wanting to remain in a type of regime that has either been bequeathed to us or imposed on us has both positive and negative aspects. But each people must ask itself today what type of regime it needs for my country, and that's where the answer lies. The best choice is the choice of the people over the people. Choosing a parliamentary system is a choice that must be respected. If I choose a presidential system, that's the choice that must be respected. We'll be asking you about the effectiveness of the people's choice. Most of the time, elections are organized in a shaky manner, where it's not certain that what comes out of the ballot box is the expression of the people's will. Who thinks that all elections are flawed? I'm presenting now. I can take examples from you as a journalist in what you've specified. For example, we had the recent elections in Cameroon a few years ago, French-speaking countries. That's the only reason, don't we agree? In French-speaking countries. I wanted to correct you in a friendly way. Some people use this narrative to say that in Africa there are only savages who defraud elections and have bad governance. On this continent, I teach political science and philosophy. Some African countries, like Botswana, have well-organized elections, despite the perception of fraud in others. We always hope that wherever there are elections, the results will come from the ballot box. It will be the result of the voters, that's what's important. So Ali Diaruba was referring to Togo. Togo has changed recently and it's a big debate. I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. What justifies Togo's decision to change its management system in this way? I can't imagine that you, as an intellectual, necessarily had anything to do with it. Why did Togo decide to give Parliament a central role? When I said you have to be inventive, you can innovate. After 60 years of independence, let's talk about Togo today. We said no. We had experimented with a presidential political system for 6 decades, but today we're able to say, well, we want to try something else to see what it's going to be like. Don't think it's out of the question that, after a certain number of decades, we might come back to this system. But at least we know the advantages of the presidential system. The disadvantage is that we want to do this experiment today, to be able to assess the advantages and disadvantages. But for the moment, in doing this study, we say that when we see parliamentary regimes, most of the parliamentary regimes that we encounter in the world and even in Africa, parliamentary regimes seem to be the more stable regimes than presidential regimes. And even in Europe, there are more parliamentary systems than presidential systems, but what's more important is the credibility of the elections, whether it's a parliamentary system in Togo today or a presidential system. If the election results are not credible, we're back to the same thing. Professor Robert DUSSEY, what's your answer? Particularly to a section of Togolese public opinion, notably your opponents, who believe that this change of system was just a pirouette for President FN Yassine B to perpetuate himself in power like his compatriots in French-speaking Africa. To stay in power forever, like his compatriots all over French-speaking Africa. Why is President Faure Gnassingbe going to make a constitutional amendment? President Ford has been in power for 4 years, but with elections approaching and tensions rising, the situation is reminiscent of Grenoble. Despite appearances, he is making efforts to be amicable. Mali is a prime example of this international context. There are always small problems that need to be solved in every country, and political action is about finding solutions. In Togo, there is no point in having the next elections if we were still under a presidential regime. President Fornasik, Ben, is recognized.
Thank you, families, for your time. It has been a long video. Yes, now you can make up your mind. What do you think? They are joining AES, they are not joining AES. That's it for you. Those of you who understand French, please head on to this channel, Avoid Africa, and listen to it all yourself, and then make up your mind. Take your own decision on the matter. This is the Foreign Minister of Togo. Thanks to him for clarifying these questions and all the rumors that is going on. And we congratulate Togo for doing the right thing, standing by their brothers. At the end of the day, we are all one. So thanks to him and his team for playing a good mediators, because not every mediator is good. Some is for their own interest. But for them, they did it for Africa. And for that, we are very, very grateful. Families, I will leave you here. Till next time, see you soon. God bless you all. Credit to Voice Africa. Thank you.